This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Have you been struggling lately? Maybe you're having trouble sleeping, difficulty with the relationship, or just suffering from self doubt. Now, y'all know there's no shame in my game, and life has been lifing lately. Trying to manage the priorities of being a wife, mom, friend, and full time entrepreneur, it can get overwhelming. If this sounds like you, then BetterHelp wants to help you today. BetterHelp offers licensed therapists who are trained to listen and help you. Talk to a therapist in a private online environment at your convenience. There are over 20,000 therapists in BetterHelp's network, which gives you access to help that may not be available in your area. All you have to do is fill out a questionnaire to assess your specific needs, and then you get matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. How cool is that? Then you schedule secure video and phone sessions. Plus, you can exchange unlimited messages, and everything you share is completely confidential. You can also request a new therapist anytime at no additional charge. Join the 2 million plus people who have taken charge of their mental health with an experienced therapist from BetterHelp. There's a special offer to the Slaying Self-Doubt podcast listeners. You get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/slang. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/slang, SLAYING. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. You're listening to the Slaying Self-Doubt podcast with Coach Felicia, where we empower Black women to overcome their doubts, fears, and insecurities in order to give birth to their God-given purpose. Join me and sometimes some of my friends on our journey as we remind you that you are not alone. I'm Felicia Wallace, and together we will find our fears and slay them. Hey Slayers, welcome back to another episode of Slaying Self-Doubt podcast. It's your girl, Coach Felicia. We are back for part 2 of Rest is Essential. Before we get started, I just want to welcome all the new Slayers for joining our movement. However you found us, whether it was by way of a solo episode, guest episode, Instagram, LinkedIn, what's the other one? YouTube, any of those. We're so glad that you're here. And while you're here, we ask that you share this episode or this podcast with 10 other people. We are still trying to hit 100,000 downloads, you guys, this year. And I know we're at May 3rd. I'm recording this on May 3rd. And last week when I recorded this, I said, oh, by the time we hit Sunday, we'll be at 78,000. No, we are not at 78,000. And again, I'm going to still put that on me. Obviously, who else is there to put it on? But I think it's really because of just this readjustment. I don't think I realized how hard it was going to be. Again, talking about this transition of like doing the things, remembering what needs to be done. And also, again, I told y'all before about that daggone Facebook hack just messed things up because I didn't have to be very intentional. And so I was so interested this morning. I was talking to my son. He was frustrated with not getting some things done from yesterday and today. So he was running late. He was late to school and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what you should use? You should use the reminder app in your phone and make a to-do list and this, that, and the third. And so I'm telling him like all these ideas. And I was like, girl, you need to take your own advice, right? Like, because you get so caught up in the week and what's happening and all the things that then you get to Friday and you're like, did I do what I said no, I didn't. And so knowing I have, layers of titles, and with those titles comes assignments and this, that, and the third, like, yeah, it's just a lot. So I'm going to take my own advice and try to make this work so that we can get these numbers. This is all about reaching $100,000. That's all this is really about. So share, and share. What was I about to say? Oh, so I saw this post on Instagram the other day that this lady was saying that she was in a season of grief. Her child, I think one of her children, graduating from I believe it was college or something, and just how she was feeling. And that resonated with me all over again. I think, a couple of years ago, I was telling y'all how I was feeling about my oldest son graduating from 8th grade and going to high school and that being a space. And the other day, I, got this email from the school for my youngest son and trying to get all those things together. And I was just like emotional all over again. We were in a car and I was just like, I think I'm tearing up. And he was like, Are you crying? And I was just like, I thought it's a different thing. I'm like, you're not going to understand until you have kids. And to me, I only have two, so I'm assuming this is how it is, right? So I'm like, with two kids, you have your first and then your last, right? Like that's it. Those are the only two emotions, the only two feelings you can have. When you have multiples, you're thinking, oh, it's the next kid. It's still emotional, right? But imagine having five, right? And then your first kid does something, then your second kid, like you have the same excitement, right? It's excitement each time, like, oh, my baby's graduating and now I got two more, like that. Versus, like, for me, I feel like having two kids is like that first time of like, oh my gosh, I did this, right? Like we did this together. We got him through this, that, and the third. We're on to high school. This is a new adventure. All of the steps to get you there were the first time that I've ever done it. Applying to high schools, getting scholarships or grants and financial aid and all of those things were first times, right? So to go through it a second time, the pressure is still the same, but then it hits you like it hit me, last week. And I was just like, this is the last time I get to do this, right? Like, I don't like this. My baby. My baby is graduating from eighth grade and going into high school. And, as much as we try to rush our kids' development at random times, like, I can't wait till they old enough to do this or blah, blah, blah. It's like when you're in it, you be like, no, wait, hold on. Let's just give me an extra little time. So I don't necessarily know if I'm in a season of grief. That might be the word, actually. I don't, like, because I was going to try to call it something else, but no, that might be the word. It might be just grieving that, my baby's not a baby anymore. Like, with high school comes all these different responsibilities, different changes. My oldest son is about to take driver's ed. Like, there are a lot of new things happening for all of us. And, yeah, like I don't know. Like I just, every now and again I just get a little teary eyed and it's okay. Also, there's the excitement that comes along with it and more gratefulness than anything, right? Like I believe that as parents, no matter how you start, when you are able to look over your life and look over your parenting journey and no, the sacrifices that you made. The hard times, the difficult times, the times that you was like, child, who gave me these kids and why, right? Those moments. And so when they get to that place of like, dog, we did this, right? Like we did it, like we are here. This is it. It's a proud moment, right? And even though you'll have those stepping stones at different times in their lives, right? I'm sure that long time from now when I become a grandparent, it'll be like, oh my gosh, I remember, but for right now, like these are the moments where you're like, you did that. Like you did a good job. Like they turn out to be really good kids and they are, you don't know. Like you have hopes and dreams for your children when they're born and you just don't know what it's going to be like. And so when you're able to see that you've done a pretty good job. It definitely is a proud moment. And so I think I've done a great job with my kids, if I say so myself, and I do. So whatever. And so I'm in a space of just like gratitude, proudness, but also just a smidge of grief, a smidge. But I'm going to get through that, right? Where that's what's going to happen because it's going to come up in 2 more years when my oldest son graduates from high school, child, and that's going to be a whole nother. Oh, child. Okay, so let's move forward. So last week we talked about rest, and I was sharing with you all the fact that rest is essential. And so today we're going into part two of that. So just as a reminder, I read a book called Sacred Rest by Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith, and it was for the retreat that I did a couple of weeks ago, the women's retreat with my church, and so it was such a great book and I think the presentation went well that I wanted to share it with you on here. Okay. And so the definition of rest, the rest is to cause someone or something to stop doing a particular activity or stop being active for a period of time in order to relax and get back your strength. That's from the Cambridge Dictionary. And I told you all, like, it was the get back your strength part for me, right? Like I really was like, we tend to think about rest as like, oh, I just need to take a rest real quick. But it's like you have to be resting for the right reasons. Like sometimes just sitting down, yeah, but it's to regain your strength. And I want us to remember that in every single time that we are resting from whatever, the purpose is to regain your strength to complete whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing, right? And so the scripture says, Hebrews 4, 9 through 11 says, therefore, a Sabbath rest remains for God's people. For the person who has entered his rest has rested from his own works, just as God did from his. Let us then make every effort to enter that rest so that no one will fall to the same pattern of disobedience. And last week I shared that I did not know that not resting was disobedient, but it totally makes sense, right? Because God in all his godness rested, and he was still God, and he was still who he is to us, and who the creator of the earth, right? Of the and it didn't take away from that. And so my encouragement to you last week was that resting does not mean you're not still a mom, an entrepreneur, a CEO, a boss, a wife, a friend. Like you need to rest in order to continue to be that, right? And last week we talked about that rest is one of those things that you can either honor the need to rest or surrender to the mandatory rest. And that was in the book. And I said, you better sit down before you get sat down. Okay. And I am a firm believer of that. We talked about physical and emotional rest last week. And this week we'll be talking about mental rest and spiritual rest. So, mental rest is allowing our minds to be quiet and still without ruminating on what needs to be done. I don't know about y'all, but that again is me. It's a struggle to sometimes turn my brain off. I hear that so many times. Like, okay, so yoga and meditation and anything that makes you be quiet never works for me because I feel like I ain't feel like I know my brain just doesn't turn off. It doesn't like thoughts still come and then I be trying to problem solve while I'm in my thought, right? So I'd be like, oh, what's for dinner? And I'm like, oh, we got chicken in the refrigerator. Oh my, we had chicken yesterday and this, that, and third. And what's the this? And then I'm like, oh, well, you're so really my mind is just not at rest. I was having a conversation with my husband not too long ago. He's works nights and he was talking about his sleep habits and I was just like, I mean, I don't understand. You in a pitch black room, like just go to bed. And he was just like, it's really my mind. He was like, I can't go to sleep because I'm thinking about one, I'm off time. Everybody else is awake, right? Everybody else is up and people are at work when I'm trying to sleep. That's the one thing. It's just a natural, it's not natural. But then also he's like, my brain just starts, I just start thinking about stuff. And then I cannot quiet it down. And so because I'm just thinking about all the different things, like I might as well just get up. And so then that's causing me not to get like physical rest, right? And so that is just a reminder that sometimes we have to find ways to mentally rest and make sure that we're doing that because the lack of mental rest adds to the lack of physical rest because if your brain doesn't turn off, your body is still active. And I was like, you ever like not even in his situation or even in the conversation I had with him, but also oftentimes even for me, like I go to sleep thinking about something and then I feel like I'm awake because I'm like thinking about it while I'm sleeping and I wake up still thinking about it. And when I wake up, then this just happened to me like the other week and like last week sometime and then I like immediately text the person and it's like, bruh, was you sleep though? Because how you wake up with a solution or a question or a follow-up, right? Like this was your thought that you went in all night and then in the morning you thought of something. So it's like my brain was never really like turned off. And I'm sure there's probably some scientific stuff that says no, actually it is, but it doesn't feel like it because you wake up. Sometimes you wake up feeling energized with the information that you have, but it can't be like that on a constant battle. So some of the things that you may experience if you need mental rest is that you feel as if you can't keep up mentally with your to-do list. And so I just said the whole thing about creating a to-do list with my son. Like I sat after I dropped my kids off, I went ahead and made the list, right? And even as I was writing, I was like, oh, this is just too much. Like, am I gonna get all this done today? And then when I got home, I realized, oh my gosh, that was just my personal to-do list. That doesn't even have anything to do with my work to-do list or my slaying self-doubt to-do list. So how do you manage that? So I immediately got overwhelmed and was just like, I'm gonna take this. And I just was like, girl, just right. So immediately I was stressed out. You experience self-doubt and insecurity, which prevents you from trying new things. Some That's that overthinking, right? Like mentally, I'm so focused on worried about what it's going to be that I don't even do the things. And y'all know that's me, right? You snap at your family and coworkers about insignificant things. That has happened to me multiple times. At my previous job, my husband used to always be like, "You're aura, like you need to go back upstairs, go out the door and come back in," right? Sometimes that we don't realize I'm not mad at you. I'm not upset at my family or whatever have you. If it's at home, maybe it's something that happened at work. And I had to learn how to like de de I don't, what's the word? Oh my gosh, I can't think right now. I had to learn how to like come down, right? Like, so I would get in my car and I didn't add to it, right? Because now that I even think about it, I would like leave work stressed out, call a coworker, talk to the coworker all the way home about the stuff that's stressing me out versus decompress. That's the word. Versus decompressing in the car, right? Maybe listening to some music, some worship, a sermon, something or whatever is going to bring calm me down, right? And not have me so amped up on the thing. But what happens is that because it's in our minds, we are continuous, like we just keep focusing on it. And then when we get around the people who have nothing to do with what's going on, we're irritated at them because they're interrupting our thought process, or they want some of our time, they want some of our attention, but we are so focused on this thing that probably really doesn't matter to anybody else and shouldn't even matter to you, that we are while we lash out at them, right? And the same thing is at work. You go to work and you get around some people and they in a mood and it don't have nothing to do with you. It got everything to do with maybe a difficult conversation they had to have with their child or their spouse, or maybe they just, I don't know, woke up on the wrong side of bed. But we have to find ways to like decompress ourselves in different times because we're going to always go through stuff. There's always going to be something to do. And we have to figure out ways to make sense for ourselves so that it doesn't harm us physically. Okay. And then the last thing, it says you spend most of your day on tasks you find overwhelming. Sometimes you can get focused on the thing and then you just be so stuck in the thing that you don't move. I've had that happen plenty of times. And so ways to mentally rest. Okay. First of all, y'all, especially as women, we have to give ourselves permission to rest. Like, it's okay. Like, I think sometimes what we think is that if we don't do it, something's not going to get done. It might not. And that's okay. Like, it is. So a friend of mine, I call her, and I normally don't listen to voicemails, but like when you're in a car, so the voicemail comes on and she says, whatever. And then at the end, she said, if this is an emergency, call 911. And I thought about it. I was like, that is so, like, it was funny to me. Like, I giggled, right? And so when she called me back, I was like, I love that, right? But she was just like, I'm in this season right now that if it's an emergency, I can't help you, right? Like, I can't put out this fire. I'm not a firefighter. Like, why are you ask? Like, what do you want me to do? That's not my job. I cannot help you. So if you deem it an emergency, call somebody else. Get somebody else to do it, right? And I think what happens is we put this expectation on ourselves that we have to be everything for everybody, and we're not doing what we need to do for ourselves. And so we feel selfish. We feel guilty about resting. And I've shared on here multiple times, the Lord has sat me down too many times for me to not take it seriously when I know I need to rest. I know the moments physically, how I feel, mentally, how I feel. Like, I really be like, if out loud I say I'm tired or I'm sleepy, and I feel it at the same time, go lay down, right? Because I'm not helping myself. Now, there may be some things that I need to do differently, right? Like, sometimes we're tired because we're not drinking enough water. And I say that as I'm about to sip this water, but sometimes we're tired because we don't drink enough water, because we're not nourishing our bodies, we're not eating, we're not taking care of ourselves in the way that we're supposed to. And we talked about that last week in regards to physical and emotional rest. Like some of it is just taking care of yourself, doing the things that you need to do. Your body will shut down if you do not give it what it needs. And that includes water, that includes food. And I am talking to myself because currently, right now, it's about to be 12 o'clock and I ain't ate nothing all day. And for some people, like I don't intentionally fast and I don't do intermittent fasting, right? So for me, I would have already eaten by now. And so even as we're having this conversation, like I can feel my body feeling different, right? And so I'm like, okay, girl, yeah, you're gonna push through to do this, but immediately when you're done doing this, you need to go get something to eat. The other part is that along with this mental rest, right? This is how the Lord be. This is how the Lord be using me in these moments, okay? Because prior to pressing record, I had the opportunity to eat. It's not like I didn't, but in my mind, I'm saying I need to get this done. And because I need to get this done, this has to wait. And the sacrifice for my nurturing myself and taking care of myself is currently having a physical reaction. Like that's the consequence. The consequence is a physical reaction that's happening to me that I can just feel. Like I know what it is, which is something that for me, I have to stop doing. I have shared with you all multiple times that stress physically attacks my body, right? I've had the Bell's palsy, I've had the alopecia, I have some other autoimmune disorders that come from stress. And here I am physically stressing my body out because I just wouldn't get nothing to eat because I ain't feel like it. Had a whole nother conversation about that, about feelings, right? And just not doing the things that you need to do. But we have to give ourselves permission to rest, permission to do the things to take care of ourselves so that we can show up whole. If you don't do that, like you sitting somewhere and you feeling woozy, you feeling like, oh, I don't know, just I feel a little some type of way, then what we do, we just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna continue to push through. No, sometimes you just gotta stop, do what you need to do, and then keep it moving. And if that means that the thing that you need to do has to be pushed back, okay. Like at the end of the day, so what? You rather be well than to be sick. Like it's going to cost you something, one or the other. Is it going to cost you your health and your wellness by pushing these things to the back burner and not taking care of yourself? You don't want that. Like that's just the end of that. The second thing is spending time with God. Sometimes the mental rest is literally casting our burdens to Him. The scripture that I use for that day. Now I got to go back and look at my notes. For yeah, cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. We are relying on our own strength in so many different things. We are relying on ourselves to be able to push past certain things, um to create something that is beyond us, right? And I mentioned to somebody today in an interview that I was doing that sometimes we gotta focus on the assignment. Like my assignment is the one thing, the experience, whatever happens around it, who it impacts, that's not up to me. That's up to God. But because I am so we put more stress on ourselves mentally because instead of giving it to him and allowing him to be able to do his work, we think we have to do our work and his work too. And it doesn't that it's never going to happen that way. And you're always going to be disappointed because you will never meet the expectation that God has. Never. You will never because it's beyond us, right? And so every single time that you are trying to create something in your own strength that only He can do, you will be stressed out. Okay. You will be mentally exhausted because it's impossible. It's impossible to create the experience that only God can do. I told y'all before, my pastor says often trust God with the outcome of your obedience. Just do your assignment. Do what you've been asked to do, and that is it. Okay. I ain't even about to hold y'all on that one. You already know. Sometimes it's going outside. Sometimes it's just getting some fresh air, especially for those of us who work remotely, who are in the house all the time, who are on these laptops, these computers, we're FaceTiming, we're getting so much the UV rays and stuff. I was telling them at the retreat though, right? So my esthetician, I was telling her, I was like, my eyes are getting darker, like under my circles. And I'm like, some of it could be literally because I'm getting older or whatever. And so she was like, it's coming from your laptop and your phone. I said, what? And she was like, it's UV rays that come from them screens. And so if you're looking at it, she was like, they tend to get darker then. So she was like, I be telling my clients put a little like sunscreen, making sure they put sunscreen underneath their eyes. And so I'm like, I put on sunscreen in the morning. She's like, you might just need a little bit more. But I was asking her about those eye patches. That was the original. That's the way the conversation came from. But it just reminded me, like, we're in these spaces where it is just drained, like it is soaking up stuff that is literally changing our appearance, and we don't even know it. We don't know that that's where it's coming from, right? So go outside, get some vitamin D, go and rest yourself so that you feel better and you can mentally just take a break from the things that you're doing. I'm practicing mindfulness. So I know I just said I can't be silent, right? However, I did do this coaching program about 2 years ago where we're practicing mindfulness, right? And some of it is just breathing, like breathing while you are cooking, breathing while you are driving, breathe. So sometimes mindfulness doesn't necessarily mean like closing your eyes, holding your hands up. Like it doesn't mean like that all the time. Sometimes it is literally in the middle of a meeting, taking a deep breath in, holding it for 4 seconds, and then releasing, right? All the way out, and then doing it a few times. I have heard because of course I didn't look this up before I did this, but it's a nerve in your body that it activates it. So doing that at different times throughout the day, sometimes that wakes up that I think it's the vagus nerve, it wakes it up. And so the things that we're needing and whatever have you, sometimes we're just breathing too fast because we're doing too much. And sometimes you just have to slow your breath down. I am going to link a mindful exercise that we did during the retreat is literally 60 seconds. And people always, I ain't got time for that. I don't got time for that. It is literally 60 seconds of breathing. It's on YouTube. And so I'm going to link that on there so that you can just listen to it and just do it. And you can do it as often times out the day as you want. I know if you have an Apple Watch, there is uh, I think it's a mindful thing. It's a little circle thing. And it's just breathing. Literally 60 seconds. But we think it requires so much. If you give yourself 60 seconds to just practice deep breathing, I promise you it's going to change. It's going to change your life. It really is. So the next thing that we are talking about is trusting God. Okay. The scripture that I used for this was Exodus 33:14, which says, and he replied, my presence will go with you and I will give you rest. We have to make sure that we are in relationship with God. So spiritual rest is how we cultivate personal relationships to achieve something greater than ourselves, which is uniquely defined by everyone's individual spiritual journey. So your journey is going to be different from mine. Mine's going to be different from yours. I'm not telling you how your journey needs to look. What I'm telling you is that you need to be on one, right? And for me, I am a believer. I am a Jesus girl. I am a God gang. All of that, like that is, I'm a God's girl. Like that's my beliefs. That's my spirituality. And so I can only speak from my own experience. I know that when me and the Lord is tussling, okay, and we have tussled plenty of times. I've told y'all he be at Bama sometimes, and it'd be cool because he know he be at Bama to me. But for the most part, it'd be because I did some Bama stuff, and so or he teaching me something in the season. But either way, when we tussle, oftentimes I will disconnect because I'm upset, I'm mad, and I don't want to hear nothing that he has to say. I can think of plenty of times in my life and in my journey that I was so upset with him that I just was like, I don't want to listen to no worship music. I don't want to go to um, no church. I don't want to hear none of that stuff because I felt like I was duped. I felt like, it was something that could have been different that wasn't. And I felt like he tricked me, right? And so throughout my journey though, I also recognize that God is always here. He is always right here. And a lot of times people don't necessarily admit to the fact of feeling distant from God, right? We tend to think that it's always like even though we know that he is right there, we know that we are distant from him. And sometimes it comes out of shame. Sometimes it comes out of guilt. Sometimes it comes out of self-doubt, whatever it is, we feel guilty about something. And so we remove ourselves from his presence. Spiritual rest, you may also feel like, so these are the things that if you need spiritual rest, you feel helpless, hopeless, trapped, or defeated. You feel a decreased satisfaction and sense of accomplishment, and you experience suicidal thoughts and depression. All of these things that can happen. I'm not saying they absolutely happen, but for every person is different, right? And if you are experiencing any type of suicidal thoughts or depression that you feel like you want to self harm or harm others, call 988. 988 is the National Mental Health Crisis and Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You could text that number or call that number at any given time, and somebody will get connected to you. And I told y'all before, I'm going to always give you the resources to take care of you, no matter what you're going through, because you don't know people's story. And sometimes people don't know because they don't know. And so I want to be able to always give you a resource. I know that, like, there are people that are called to do this work that don't have nothing to do with me. But if I can lead you to them and I can give you a resource, I would much rather do that than for you to be suffering alone and in silence. But those are the feelings that you may have. And for me as a believer, oftentimes when I feel that way, I am disconnected from God. And in order for me to feel better about myself and my situation, I got to get reconnected, right? And I have to find ways to get back in a space with him. That does not change my situation sometimes. Sometimes my situation will remain the same. It's how I feel about it. And so oftentimes the first thing for me is praise and worship. It is sometimes it could be an upbeat song that I just need to really feel something. Sometimes it's a gratitude song to remind myself of God's track record in my life. Because oftentimes when you're in something, you feel like this is the worst thing ever. And I've been in multiple worst things ever, and I'm still here, right? And so every single time something hard happens, I feel like I'm not going to be able to get through. And with active actions, and sometimes Jesus and therapy, okay, with active action and doing that, I do get through because I'm here, right? So I know that those things are behind me. So sometimes the praise and worship reminds me of the things that I've already gotten through. I will share another song that during sometimes or some of my praise and worship, there's a song Sasha Cobbs Leonard did during the pandemic called Mary's Song. And it is, she said it's a representation of what she feels like Mary was singing when Martha was being busy. Okay. So if you know, you know. Prayer and scriptures. I've told y'all multiple times, Judges 6:14 is a scripture I have stood on since I have walked into slaying self-doubt, which is go with the strength you have. I am sending you. It is a reminder that I only have what I have, and the rest is up to God. And so it also allows me to surrender the things I feel like I need control over, right? And that scripture always reminds me, Felicia, this is all the strength you got. You can't do nothing else. The rest is up to God. And so all you can do is all you can do, and that's it. And even if I just have to keep telling myself, go with the strength you have, he is sending you. Go with the strength you have, he is sending you, right? And oftentimes you put your name, and I learned this from a coach, put your name in the scripture. Felicia, go with the strength you have, he is sending you. I just read that scripture, Exodus 33:14. And easy, it says, and he replied, Felicia, my presence will go with you and I will give you rest. Like sometimes put your name in it so you make it personal to you so that you have some ownership of it and you feel like God is talking to you, right? All the times you'll look at the words and you be like, child, what did you say? I'm just keeping it real. I told you, I read different type of translations because sometimes I just need the easy version, baby. What is you saying? I don't understand that. I need the easy version. Okay. Spending time in nature. I told y'all as I've gotten older, water has been my serenity. And I really need to do a better job of getting next to bodies of water. Pools will be okay. Man-made lakes are okay. But if I can get next to like a river or a bay, because I'm in Maryland, a river or a bay or something like that, that right there to me is physical representation of God's work. Because the water gonna do what the water gonna do. Period. It's not worried about which direction it's going in. Even in the middle of a storm, the water's still going to do what the water is going to do. And it is literally the thing that God created that doesn't have any worries, doesn't have any cares, is literally just doing the assignment it was given. And when I see that and I'm able to see the separation from the sky, it's just something about it that just brings me peace, right? Even as I'm talking about this, even I'm not, I know I don't like insects, birds, or whatever. So my husband was watching the animal channel or whatever have you. And I was just like, here they somebody doing something on some type of, I don't know what the bug was or whatever have you, but I'm like, these mammals out here with like creating food, knowing how to do, like God has given them everything they needed to survive, to take care of themselves, and they not worried about. They just do the work that they're supposed to do to get the result. Now, every single time it ain't gonna work, somebody gonna come and knock over your ant hill or your ant whatever. Like it may not, but you just keep going, right? And so I'm just like, there are all of these representations of things that God created that reminds us that He has us, that reminds us that you don't need to do not another thing. There's some work that we have to do because yes, we're humans and His assignments that He's given us. But for the most part, well, not even for the most part, we have everything we need. Like that is it. So again, go with the strength you have. He is sending you. Unplug for 24 hours. I need to get back on this, but generally on Mondays, I take a rest from social media so that I am decreasing the intake of other stuff, right? And I use that time to listen to praise and worship music and listen to sermons. I took that break during Lent and I really haven't been back on Instagram, honestly. Like it'll be days that'll go by that I'll be like, oh shoot, I never even checked. Like even this week, I realized I was supposed to schedule something, but I didn't, and just kind of moved on with my life. But I'm like, I'm realizing like taking a break from it is better for my peace of mind. And then get into community with like-minded people, like-minded women. So that you're able to pour into each other and people can pull back into you. Sometimes we are struggling with rest in general because we don't know what it looks like. The people around us aren't resting. We keep seeing them move and hustling and grinding and all this stuff. And we think, oh, I'm gonna look like the weakling out of my group because I'm not being obedient and rest, right? And I don't want to seem like the all person. What you don't want to do that, and you know that. Like get around people who are in the season that you're in at this time. We're going to have different seasons. I told y'all before when I first joined my church, Zion Church, I was in a life group and it was of women, but I was a first time mom and he was still in a little courier. And when I got there, I mean, they was having brunch, they was doing all different types of stuff. And I was like, this ain't my life no more. Like I'm a parent. And these women that are in this group, as kind as they are and as cool as they were, I'm just in a different season of my life. And so I ended up finding a single moms group. And it was called Moms Flying Solo, right? And I was in that group until I was no longer a single mom. And then when I got married, I got into community with other married women. Like when I became a coach, I was around coach friends. Became an entrepreneur. Got entrepreneur friends. Those aren't the same people, right? Because when my season changes and my life changes, I need to be around like-minded people so that I can continue to move forward. And so I'm encouraging you to get into community, whether it's, they have lots of different communities on social media. If you are interested in that, you know, you, when I say interested in that, I wasn't thinking about anything specific. But if you're following people and they have a community, join their community. Most often it's free, and so just join their community and let that get around other people. If your church have small groups, if you're in the DMV and you attend Zion Church or you don't attend Zion Church, we have life groups. You can go to our website, zionchurch.org, and you can sign up for a life group, and that would allow you get in connection in community with other women. Y'all know we used to have a community, but then Facebook was hating, and so I'm trying to find a different space for you to get in community with us. That is my goal for this year. I'm trying to find something before the summer. But in the meantime, sign up to our newsletter so that when a community is birthed, you will be the first to know that we have it. Okay. And so again, y'all, I really want you all to think about what's the rest? What kind of rest do you need? That's the question for this episode. What kind of rest do you need? Like I said at the beginning, there were 7 different ones. From that book is mental rest, creative rest, social rest, spiritual rest, physical rest, sensory rest, and emotional rest. Again, get the book. The link will be in the show notes so that you can read it for yourselves or download the Audible, whichever one. But yeah, I think that having this conversation is helpful, and I want to continue talking about rest. I don't want it to be so taboo that we just stop doing it and we just don't. And so talk back to me. Let me know which rest you're gonna focus on. For me right now, I think I'm in a season of physical rest. Just because, like I told you, like all of it matters, but for me, it's probably mental and physical rest because I know how stress affects my body, and I just have to learn to take my own advice, eliminate it, delegate, find ways to decompress, and just continue to do the things that I need to do for me, and that's it. As always, y'all, thank y'all so much for rocking with me. Again, if you enjoy this podcast and you find it valuable, please consider making a donation up by buying me a coffee. Your small donation of $5 to $10 could help me create new content, grow our audience, and purchase new equipment for live recordings. Take charge of your mental health and get 10% off your first month of therapy at betterhelp.com/slang. That's SLAYING. Make sure you subscribe to the Slayer Nation newsletter. Make sure you share this episode with at least 10 people. We're still trying to hit 100,000 downloads. Follow me on Instagram at Slaying Self Doubt. Until next week, keep slaying, sis. See ya. All right, y'all, that's all for this week. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to share, subscribe, rate, and review. Remember to head over to Facebook and Instagram and follow me at Slaying Self Doubt. Oh, wait, don't forget, go to my YouTube channel and watch this episode, and remember to press the subscribe button. Until next week, see ya.